and Jesus knew it. No longer was the system serving people, but rather it was serving only a select few, those in power, those with money. That was just not acceptable for Jesus. So Jesus gets a little excited, he gets a little upset, and he flips some tables over. And he tells the people to get these out of my Father's house. They were all curious of what in the world is happening and who is this guy? What gives him the authority to do what he just did? So they start questioning Jesus and saying, show us a sign of the authority that you have. He said, destroy this temple and in 3 days I will raise it up. And the people were confused. They were wondering, how can that be? It took us 46 years to build this temple. And you're telling us that you can raise it up in 3 days? That is not humanly possible. And they were right. See, the people failed to see what Jesus was talking about. He wasn't talking about the building as the temple. Jesus was talking about him. He was talking about his body. He was talking about what was coming. He was talking about his death and his resurrection. That he would die and in 3 days, God would raise him up. The temple in Jerusalem was where people would come from near and far to meet God. Now Jesus had flipped that upside down because now people can meet God in Jesus himself. For God has come into the world and has taken up human flesh and is now among them. Instead of coming to the temple to offer up an animal sacrifice, Jesus would become the ultimate sacrifice. Sacrifices were no longer necessary because he, Jesus, would become the sacrificial lamb for all. Jesus challenged the authority of his day by flipping those tables. He was challenging the institution. It was a challenge to the system that was in place, a system that was broken. It was so embedded in its own rules and practices that they were no longer open to a fresh revelation of God, for they were too inwardly focused. Unfortunately, not only did they face this issue in Jesus' day, but we continue to face this same issue today. By doing things the way that we have always done it, by being stuck in an antiquated way and not being open to new ideas and new revelations from God. We must be open to the possibility of transformation, of change and renewal. We must be open to the lead and to the call of the Holy Spirit in cleansing of the temple and flipping of the tables. Jesus is teaching us about cleansing and flipping tables in our own lives and keeping our focus on the cross. He teaches us to be mindful about everything that we do in the temple and with the temple. Yes, Jesus called the temple his Father's house. But he also flipped the table and redefined the temple as his body. Today we can look at the temple as a church, as a place of worship. But we also must remember that our body is a temple, for it is where God dwells. What are we doing today that needs cleansing? What is it in our life that has become a distraction? What is it that you, church, that I, as the pastor of the church, is doing wrong, that Jesus would come in and flip the tables on? What is distracting us that is keeping us behind from following Jesus more faithfully? Perhaps, maybe, for every one of us, we need Jesus to come into our lives, not just here in the church, but also in our homes, also in our small groups, and into our hearts, and do a deep clean. To do a deep clean and get rid of the stuff that does not belong, to get rid of the stuff that have been collecting and accumulating filth for so long. We need Jesus to come and cleanse us from the filth that have been collecting, in order that we may worship God more faithfully, in order that we can better prepare for the holy season that is upon us. We are all invited by Jesus today to take a look into our own lives, to take a look at our own hearts, and do a deep clean and get rid of the stuff that does not belong.